Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum. Ji ayanu pakhair agale ni hao chunashumme washmale. Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal? Hale shuma chatore, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaba. Buna, mucho gracias, Fabi, balli kare aaya. Hoş geldin and ayosaya khuyamora chivato chi hal yod kali mera khairutan. And a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning. Alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to Miss Hajra Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well, that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. And whatever you have in your hearts or in your minds, ladies and gentlemen, we hope and pray that Allah will bestow all of those things upon you with all His blessings as well. And we ask for His blessings for all our entire lives as well, for as long as we all are going to live. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, with this prayer, I would love to ask my wonderful colleague, Hajra, kaisi hain aap?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for introducing me. Jazakallah khair. So today happens to be Monday. It's the start of the new week, and there's a lot of literature that is nowadays coming that on the social media, which I don't hold it as a very authentic authority on the literature, but people say that it's very scary because it's the start of the week. But anyways, today happens to be 22nd of July, and with regards to this particular day, because this happens to be the World Brain Day, so there was a new development in which I think professors at the Harvard University particularly had this very successful operation where they were able to disrupt the epileptic signal. So they were able to cure people who had epilepsy, and that was their development that was deemed as something to be a scientific triumph at that moment, because we know that epilepsy had been a sort of a disease which was untreated, right? So I think, and I'm reminded of this particular hadith of Holy Prophet Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that all the conditions, all the medical conditions have shifa except for the death, right? So we will further develop this conversation and furthermore explore what are the implications of the epilepsy. But I think,
and Hajra, in addition to this, because you've spoken about the triumph, of science as well over here with respect to Brain Day as well, there was another conversation that I had with a neurosurgeon, because I was recently under the hands and the care of a neurosurgeon as well. They said, I mean, this is very interesting. I don't know whether it's going to happen in future or not, but we do believe that fiction becomes reality. So they said that, their team of researchers have actually figured out that gene which is responsible from your birth till your adulthood, which takes you from, right from the birth to you being young, probably at the age of 20 or 25 or 32. And then that gene will trigger another gene which will take you towards, your older age as well, and then death eventually. So what they've done is that they've figured out a way how to control that gene, and that how to control that gene not to trigger the next gene as well. And they're saying that that gene will only be given to people of super race. So I don't know what they're referring to as super race, but imagine that means that people might not age, that means that people might not get ill, that people might not get sick. I mean, all of this is happening. We will talk about it, but right now I think what we're going to talk about is people who are out there to help other people. We do know for a fact that, how many students, in fact, children are out of school. I mean, for us to actually kind of know that, okay, this is a larger number, but imagine that there are people, there are foundations who are working day in, day out to make sure that they have a skill set to have a great life.
That's very true, and I think why not further develop the conversation when we talk about the skill development, because that is the area Shahzad and I have been talking a lot on, and what needs to be done. And I think Pakistan has a huge potential, and we have been talking about the human resource that we have, and that human resource when leaves the country and go outside it develop its skills. But how can we empower them while living in Pakistan and making sure that their skills or their potentials are up to the mark, and they're also matching the requirements of the market needs, and that is also coming from a very passionate, deeper level. Because when things are coming from a very passionate, deeper level, you are heavily invested in that, and you don't just merely see it as a job or profession, right? So without further ado, we are going to explore the youth empowerment, that too in the context of the skill development. So without any further ado, we are very glad that we have been joined by CEO of the Hashu Foundation. He happens to be Haris Qayyum Khan. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Assalam, and thank you for having me.
Right. Sir, so Hashu Foundation is a very big name, and we have been seeing that how they are invested in the research and development, and their work is guided through the research. So would you like to further elucidate on what are the key areas on which you are working, and we will further explore that conversation.
Yeah. So thank you. So Hashu Foundation really is a development organization, or I say, socio-economic development partner. And we've been working in the country for the last 35 years. And we have, beneficiaries and people we have worked with across the country, and they're above a million. Where really what Harshu Foundation really focuses on is, first of all, human development. In
Right.
that we are looking at education, skills, nutrition and health. Again,
Right.
there's of course a humanitarian philanthropic side to it, which is very important and is part of our, of course, our sort of our culture. And as well as that, we look at future. We're looking at resilience. We're looking at future skills. We are looking at climate action and how we can create, how can be prepared for what the future holds for us. As you said, rightly said, Harvard or brain science and this, and there's a new world that's happening, and we are sort of making sure that our youth and our nation as a whole is prepared for
Right.
what's ahead.
Exactly. And in addition to this, obviously, because we were having a conversation even before we got started with the show, we certainly wanted to precisely focus on where we were talking about youth empowerment and what sort of vocational trainings are taking place. So you were very kind, that you let us know that there's hospitality and whatnot. But imagine that with 22 million children out of school, we do need a lot of people who actually invest their energy and most of the time making sure that they actually have a skill to live a life. Now, if we are to speak about Harshu Foundation and their corporate social responsibility side of it, what sort of trainings are we in particular talking about? And is it like, one size fit all? Or do you really have a process with which you check whether, okay, this guy is interested in plumbing, whether this guy is interested in doing stitching or tailoring or something else? And what sort of an array do we have in terms of trainings?
So I would actually I'll respond firstly with out of school children, and I really, vocational training, I don't see it, and we don't see it as only for someone who is not educated. I think it needs to be incorporated into our curriculum. I think vocational and technical skills usually are part of, and traditionally they have been looked upon as sort of the second tier of education.
Yep.
And your degree holding certification were seen as the primary, and then this was seen as sort of a tertiary sort of.
Yeah, हमारा
or se-
वैसे भी एक मसला है.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
While with this new disruptive technologies, AI, what's happening, I think skills, and especially human skills, have become increasingly important. And hence, so they're sort of array of training. So we specialize, or because of our businesses or our sort of area, we have hospitality training, which is needed and will
Right.
always be needed, right?
True.
And then you have technical skill, or you have skills which are sort of plumbing, electrician, all that sort of stuff, which is again very much important and
True.
needed.
And it's in demand as well.
And it's in demand, right? And then you have future skills, which we have to look at with, again, green transitions and energy, where it comes, even our vehicles are going to change soon. So our mechanics have to be educated too.
Yeah.
So I think education is a must for everyone.
And I think we also, sir, need to explore, because you were talking about the climate change, which is one of the focal area, and you are primarily belonging to a tourism industry, and that too at the intersection of vocational training. So, and we were exploring a very interesting conversation before this red light of the camera went on, and we were talking about how important it is to educate the local or the indigenous community of that particular area in which there is a boom in the tourism, right? So if I'm going there to a particular area, and if I ask for what are the touristic spots there, how important do you think the attitude of the local community can help me in propelling or blooming the tourism industry, and what are you doing in this regard?
So again, valid points, and you've sort of picked up really important things from our conversation. So when it comes, again, community, as we speak of community and development, I think something we have is we work for something we call smart villages, right?
Yep.
And actually, when it, not only tourism, it's an ecosystem, right? So we actually start, because we work on human development, so really an inclusive development, and that cannot, and even if you look at the national progress, it cannot only be urban, it has to be both rural and urban. So something we do is called smart villages, which are really sort of sustainable methods, and resilient technologies, where we use these villages are used to create inclusive growth, right? So we work on the whole value chain, where is skills training, early education, and then supporting those people, be it skills on farming, sustainable farming, water, water use, all the way down to their skills and looking and finding them job placements, right? So,
Right.
so that's a whole holistic package that sort of supports those communities, and we hope to expand that to bring in development to the grassroots.
And would you like to share some success story when you're talking about the concept of the smart villages and sustainable technologies or methods particularly, because that's a very fascinating idea, it's a very interesting conversation. So I mean, how, for example, in particular village, in a particular area, have you trained one particular person and then,
It's a chain process.
It's a success story.
I'd rather give a larger
Sure,
example
sure,
of
sure.
this, and maybe two examples
Sure,
of sustainable development. So, we went in and training people on honeybee farming,
Oh, that's interesting.
and it was one of our very successful projects. Now, these honeybee farmers from the rural area has become a startup now, which is Organics Plus, which was supported by the Hashu Foundation, and hence, I look at Hashu Foundation as a very important development partner, because we're not only looking at donor funding, but we're also creating entrepreneurs. Now we have a whole startup, and these individuals who have been trained and are producing that honey have a value chain from which they can sell it to other producers
So,
of honey.
they have a supply chain now, so they know, who their consumers are,
Yes.
the entire market is open for them, and it's wonderful. In addition to this, because we are speaking of, smart villages, communities, what I was thinking, it just popped into my head, and what I was thinking was that, for example, if we start from Karachi till the north of Pakistan, we do see in Karachi there will be a community where they're invested in fishing. We'll come down a little bit as well. We do have people who are invested in, masala manufacturing and
Yes.
whatnot. Then we have port cities, obviously, to ourselves as well. So we do need workforce over there. So is there any sort of research? Because we go to the north, there will be people, who are invested in hospitality. We go to Punjab, there's a lot of farming. So do we do this much of research where we do know that, okay, this is an ecosystem which exists already, and what we need is that we need to bring in more people who can add value to whatever they're already doing? Or is it more of the sort that, okay, honeybee farming, that's something that you came up with, obviously the locals need to be a part of it. So is it based on research कि यार ये सिंध में इस तरह का काम होता है, सिंध के लोगों को ये तैयारी कराओ, पंजाब में ये काम होता है, पंजाब में ये तैयारी कराओ? And sorry, I'm saying it in Urdu so that people can actually understand me better, the Urdu speaking audiences as well.
So we have two elements. So जो हमारी existing programming होती है, उसमें we'll do an impact assessment. So we see how impactful has our work been, and that's sort of for us to learn. The other thing is, for future planning, we do industry research, and we try to provide trainings which are in need and which are where our trained individuals can be placed in the workplace. So our workplace placement of our trainees are at 70% right now.
Okay.
And that's and we want to and we still think it can be much better. So hence we always do a survey. We are working with the private sector. Again, this really benefits to have to be part of the business community, where I hope, we will also be working more in-depth research on what actually industrial needs are. Again, I say, with new disruptions, with new technologies, with the kind of, area we're working, we really there needs to be more research. I sort of would point to a topic, something you said on Harvard, right?
Yeah.
This research in our academia is very important.
And I
And-
want
and
to come
that's
back to
a-
this
that-
as
that-
well. Hajar
that's a
bhai,
very
very
interesting
quickly,
point.
I just want to segue from the conversation that we're already having, and we'll come back to artificial intelligence and what the future holds for all of us as well. But I think whenever we speak of Hashu Group or Hashu Foundation, most of the times the first thing that comes to your mind is hospitality, right?
Absolutely.
So we do have a lot of pitches as well. I think where a lot of placements takes place in Hashu Group is people, whom you actually train for the hospitality sector. Can you please just take us through, that journey of 4 people as well, and how is it working, and are we talking about placements all over the world, probably just in Pakistan, or probably in Asia? Please take us through.
So we basically train people for the hospitality industry, when it comes to that, not only for the Hashu Group.
Okay.
And I'm very proud to say that we have associations and we have relationships with other businesses and
Associated with hospitality sector.
hospitality, and our trainees are placed in other hotels.
Yep.
Also our trainees and our trained individuals also go to Dubai,
All right.
to the Middle East. So there is, and there is respect for that sort of training and a market for it. And we hope to see that, we want to actually also give accreditation for it, and also
Right.
international accreditation for our trainees. So that sort of enables them to look for even opportunities,
Across.
And that's a very interesting point, and especially if you go abroad. So I think we have been constantly advocating that how it broadens your horizons and add more value to your work. So also let's explore the attention economy, right? So we see in the social media, it's TikTok, it's Instagram, and all of these technologies, and they're so I would say fast-paced, and I mean the element and the concept of the virality that is so embedded in them. And let's bring that into the conversation, the role of artificial intelligence and how does it figures out in the hospitality or the tourism industry, in which you have a lot of expertise in particularly area in. So how do you figure it out, and what is the latest research and the trends, particularly when we talk about professional experiences in all of these three equations?
So I'm not an expert on this. However, I see.
Even we're not.
But I see this, what you have said, I see as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I always say this in my development conversations, or even at my office. I say, let's look at the silver lining and opportunity. So, the social media, these vlogs are.
Oh yes.
Our individuals have really brought Pakistan, and increasingly more so, onto the into the interface internationally. We have a lot of international tourists coming in. There's a lot of a different image of Pakistan is being promoted through these. And of course, there's another side to the coin, but we are having a positive Monday morning conversation. And so and hence, and you also see through this sort of training, and GB is a very good example, the kind of, and also, these new, is an example of the kind of opportunities and experiences now you can have in Pakistan, which are, which are really in line with sustainable tourism, right? So what we have to do is we have to train our people who are working in the industry, and also people who are as tourists going to these areas, to understand that there's also responsibility with every individual.
True.
And that brings us a very important point, since you talked about GB, and I do remember that when I went to Naran Kaghan back in 2005, a long time ago. So the picture, and if I go now there, so the picture that I had in mind is a very, very changed picture. So with the sprouting tourism, we do see that people are immensely engaged in the deforestation, destroying the pristine beauty of those particular areas. The tourism is not very responsible. We do see littering all there. I don't think so. They are very smooth structural infrastructures of waste management there, and that is putting a very heavy pressure on the natural beauty, and natural beauty is the hook point. Because of that, people are attracted there, right? And I do see that a lot of people are cutting trees to construct concrete jungles out there, right? The tourism industry, hoteling, and all of that to make money out of that. So and when you talk about sustainable development, when you talk about sustainability in this entire equation, how important is it that we need to educate those people on what climate change is doing, because we've seen that we are witness to the vagaries of this flooding and all of that has been going on, and how it is disruptive to that entire ecosystem there. How can we smoothly ensure the running of the tourism there?
Again, it's training and education. So what we are building into our and we are working on it very seriously is awareness, and also the circular economy. That's sort of built into our training. When we are training, we're training we're training them and making them understand that there's a profit to be made as well in the sustainable economy. So that's part of our training. Also, people who we train to be, say, to work in the restaurants, in hotels, even at the basic level, can be trained to sort of engage with their guests as hosts in such a way that sort of
that you educate them as well.
Educate them as well.
Yeah.
You reinforce, and I've seen some very good examples of that. And I think we need to have the local communities, as we said earlier, engaged in that sort of understanding that they have to preserve their
And I've
habitat.
experienced that as well, so imagine, I think I went with my family to Altit Fort, and the entire workforce was actually female workers over there. And they were very amazing, so they would communicate in a way that whatever we need to do as tourists over there, they would educate us, which was wonderful. But very quickly, sir, now let's come back to where you actually spoke about future skills, because fortunately or unfortunately, the 90s generation, like me, her, you, everybody over here inside the studios, we aren't good at vlogging. We aren't good with social media. We do not know what the Instagram algorithms are, so we're somewhere in the middle. We don't know whether to pick up for a business or to actually still make sure that we are employed by somebody else. It is a problem for all of us. We're still struggling with it. But imagine that when we speak about future skills, what do you think that the future generations need to keep ahead? Because imagine that we have seen transition from tape recorders to CDs to Bluetooths and whatnot. So imagine that the time's gone from 90s till 2024. We have so much of transition, and we are not, we're particularly jack of all trades, but we are not expert at one. So what do you think that in days to come, people really need to keep their horizons open to make sure that they learn more, and so that Pakistan can benefit because of people or our human resource?
And I have a very simplistic answer for
Yeah.
this. And when you look at future skills, and especially again with these disruptive technologies and artificial intelligence, things can be done very quickly by computers. So now, some basic skills are very important. That should be part of the training curriculum and the education curriculum, which is first of all problem solving.
Yep. Critical thinking.
Adaptability.
Yep.
And these things need to be built in. Then there's the data analysis, and it's very important again the way you educate people. So analytics and how to comprehension.
Yeah.
And those things are sometimes lacking in their education system.
But sir, imagine that, I prepare myself for all of that, and if I was one of those individuals who was working at BBC, I mean, they're laying off 3% of their total staff because of the fact that there's so much technology coming in.
Yes.
Now, I'm good at critical thinking, I can comprehend things, whatever, but I'm still getting laid off. I need to do something. So what do you have in mind that, okay, this is the kind of preparedness that we really need to have with ourselves at all times so that we can actually run our own household?
Lifelong learning.
I love
Take on new skills,
Yeah.
vocational training. What's stopping you from becoming something else?
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
hence, you look whatever suits you. Look at what suits you, and you can maybe become an entrepreneur, doing your own thing. The amount.
Karna hi padega.
Karna hi padega. There's no other. We can't.
Sorry.
Job seekers.
Yeah.
We have to be job creators.
Thank you.
And that's I think and only by being skilled and lifelong learning. And this youth conversation, yes, but I think we are 225 or 230 million people,
Yeah.
right? 110 million are youth, but the rest of us can also learn and contribute.
And I'm sorry for interjecting, but we have to go on a short break, and after that we'll start a conversation. Welcome back, and before going on to the break, we had a very interesting discussion. We were exploring in-depth concepts like climate change, hospitality, tourism, and how to sustain them. And we are very glad that we were joined by Haris Saab, but now he has left. So now, since in the start I alluded to the conversation about the epilepsy and how there is in fact within the Harvard experiment carried out where they were able to disrupt that epileptic signal, so epilepsy can be treated now. And why I'm talking about it, because today happens to be World Brain Day. So without further monopolizing my conversation, we have someone who is an expert in this profession in the studio, and he's going to enlighten us why is there a particular need to observe the World Brain Day, and how can we explore children with disabilities who have neurological disorders, because everyone has the right to respectfully live in this particular society, not just our society, across the world. So without any further ado, we are very glad that we have been joined by Dr. Asfan. He happens to be a consultant neurologist. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much, Dr. Asfan.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for having me.
So
and
wonderful to have you over here, first of all, on such an important day. And this, I believe, me and Haja and our entire team, that it's for the very first time that we are observing World Brain Day. How would you highlight its significance? Why is it important? And, this year's theme, can you elaborate on that as well?
Sure. So the World Brain Day has been in place for the past 10 years, but unfortunately, in the developing countries, it's more of a recent trend. So this was basically started back in 2014 by the World Federation of Neurology, which basically runs awareness campaigns, advocacy programs throughout the world. The main reason to initiate this day was to increase the awareness regarding neurological disorders. This year, it's a very interesting theme, and we're basically focusing on brain health and prevention.
Yeah.
So with neurological disorders, unfortunately, a lot of the diseases don't have a major cure available, and we only give supportive treatment, things to improve the symptoms, but nothing that can actually cure the disease in a lot of cases. And because of that, it's very important to focus on prevention, because if you prevent the disease from happening, it can save a lot of lives and increase the quality of life as well. The main focus of this day is to increase awareness among the patients as well as among physicians.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted to ask. Now, imagine that, there will be AIDS Day, there will be so many days, and we have risen awareness about so many other illnesses. But for us, it is very unfortunate that you actually spoke about it, that in, developing countries, there are less trends how to talk about, brain illnesses. Unfortunately, we have been saying that, God forbid, somebody is casted a spell, if there was a neurological disorder on a child or an elderly person as well. Now, imagine that we've had so many myths associated with that we never focused on it, and there was not enough research to back it up. Now, imagine if we are to talk about most of the common neurological disorders, what are those, and how, let's, take advantage of this opportunity and talk about them, and how can people prevent or probably make sure that their symptoms get better, please.
Right. So one of the most common neurological diseases is stroke. A lot of us have seen stroke, in our communities, people in our families or relatives. Then another big one is epilepsy, fits. And it's particularly very important to talk about epilepsy because there's a lot of stigma associated with it. And a large chunk of our population still believes that it has something to do with, again, like black magic or something like that.
Nazar or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's, because of the paucity of the time, let's talk about stroke.
Sure.
What are the main causes? What is it that we are doing wrong?
Right.
Is there a lot of oily food,
Right,
cholesterol,
yeah.
no exercise? What?
So there are a couple of different things that we can do to prevent strokes and reduce our risk for it. So the first thing would be to exercise, and living an active lifestyle definitely helps. And for people who already exercise, adding a bit of cardio or aerobics would lower the risk. Then following a Mediterranean diet helps in preventing strokes, and that basically means going for healthy fats instead of the unhealthy ones. So adding olive oil to the diet, going for fish instead of the red meat. Then reducing their blood pressure and blood sugar levels if they have diabetes or hypertension.
And keeping a check on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another important thing that we don't usually talk about is sleep. So having a continuous 6 to 8 hours of sleep at night helps. And in the current situation, a lot of people have disrupted their sleep cycles. They use social media at night, or they're working in shifts where they aren't able to get a 6 to 8 hour continuous nap time. So focusing on sleep also helps. Another big one is depression and stress. So reducing that by reducing social isolation, engaging in things that bring happiness to you, meditation, yoga, things like those. These things, when they reduce the stress, the risk of stroke goes down.
Whatever brings me happiness, my family members don't let me do that. Let me do that. And whenever I'm sleeping, I think, my mom.
I am interested in exploring what makes you happy, right?
I mean, so,
and
I
what
like.
is such a prohibitive sort of the acts that you want to engage in that your family
let me
is
speak about it. So imagine that, I love traveling, obviously, so,
you are traveling, who is prohibiting it?
So I've been traveling, but most of them, they're like, okay, hum sabko bhi saath jana hai. Okay, yes, sab saath
That's a
jayenge.
fair demand, no?
Yeah,
Yes,
bring them
it is.
happiness as well.
Yeah, it
take them
is a
along.
fair demand, and it is a part of happiness, but on a lighter note. But now coming back to the point as well, where we were speaking about all of these issues and sleep and everything. Now next, let's touch upon epilepsy, and there's one more other common illness which I've seen and is growing, and that is dementia.
Yeah.
And I think we also need to touch on, because of the paucity of the time, that children with disabilities, their neurological disorders, and what is the connection with the screen time, right? Because we are saying the cognition, we are saying sensory disabilities that are happening, and I would say the diagnosis is multiplying, it's mushrooming across it, right? So as a doctor, how do you see this connection between them?
So there have been studies and they found that increased screen time increases the risk for autism, learning disabilities and things like those. So keeping a check on the screen time, limiting it to absolutely zero screen time for children less than 2 years, and then maybe bringing it up to 1 hour at max during the childhood is what works. The increased risk for autism and learning disabilities has been in part due to increased detection as well, because in the previous generation a lot of the children were just not diagnosed, they were not screened for it. So focusing on epilepsy, so with epilepsy there are a couple of different things to focus on. So flashing lights on the screen, that can trigger seizures. So again, reducing screen time, and then not letting children play video games with a lot of flashing lights. Wearing helmets during driving and while riding a bike, that helps because it prevents head injuries that can subsequently lead to epilepsy. With epilepsy as well as children with developmental disorders, it is particularly important to focus on pregnant women, because a lot of the times they're prescribed medications that can lead to abnormalities in the children, and then the children live with disabilities throughout their life. With dementia, so dementia, as we all know, it's age related and a pathological memory loss that occurs in elderly people. With dementia, it's very important to keep your mind stimulated. So, going through crosswords, puzzles and things like that, engaging in mentally stimulating activities, even if it's drawing or coloring or making sketches, whatever helps to keep your mind engaged.
Right. So you actively need to kind of make sure that you engage your brain. But very quickly over here, what I need to kind of touch upon is that in the West, I've seen this practice that obviously they will go to their GP, once in 6 months or, twice in a year as well, and they will always assess them. And then, even if they have to take away their license, for the safety of other people, they will do that. They will inform the, council and whatnot. We do not have such a procedure over here. So God forbid if somebody, who's got dementia, forgets about things as well. They're out there driving. They do not know where to go. Unfortunately, they're lost most of the times. And people do not have, such support staff to look after their elderly parents, maybe anybody else as well. So a lot of people are at risk. Do you think that in days to come we will have a way where we can have a pool of people where we know according to the data that, okay, these many people are suffering from dementia and that's how they're getting better, because now they have systems with which they can slow down the dementia?
Yeah, so driving is a very important thing to talk about in patients with dementia as well as epilepsy or those who have fits. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, we don't have the required laws in place because in Western countries and developed countries, the doctors are legally bound to inform the driving authorities that this particular patient is at risk of having an accident and that they should, restrict their license or keep them on a close follow-up. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, it's not a legal responsibility either on the physician or on the patient to inform the driving authority. We are advocating for it, and hopefully in the near future this would be something that would be addressed, but up till now it's just sort of a moral or ethical responsibility rather than a legal one.
And I think when we talk about World Brain Day, so we were talking through the lens of the medicine or the lens of the biology, but I think brain is much more than that. It does have a spiritual significance, and when we talk about brain, it also relates with the intellect, with the akal, and that's why Dr. Saab was saying, Dr. Saab was talking about meditation and yoga and how it brings, I think, uplifts the status of brain, right? Because this is one of the most important organ in the human body that is also dictating the actions of our, and I think the cognition and the sensory functions of a body, apart from all of the other functions. So you need to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this beautiful gift, for this beautiful organ, and make sure that you are nourishing it, not just biologically, medically, but also spiritually and all other aspects of that. And that is why WHO has defined health not just physical health, but also mental health, spiritual health, and all of these definitions. So thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for coming to our show.
Wonderful to be in conversation with such a young consultant neurologist. All the best to you as well. Thank you so much, Shifa Hospital, for letting him come over here on our show as well. For everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, it's always the teamwork, which will make the dream work. Now, one of our teammates has got his birthday today, and we want to wish him a very happy Hajj Day as well. He's one of the most amazing colleagues that we have had in our PTV World Office, very regular, always very respectful, always shares love with a lot of other people. And it's his coffee early morning in the day, which actually sets our mood right as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chaudhry Iftikhar's birthday today as well. So Chaudhry Saab, a very happy Hajj Day to you. You're one of the most amazing, most loved gentlemen over here in the entire PTV office. And we certainly cannot actually think the starting of the day without you, because the kind of love you share, the kind of smile that you wear, and the way you are, you're a wonderful human being, and we are all prayers for you. We wish you best of luck. May, prosperity and success come and kiss your feet in days to come as well. And may always you stay healthy, wealthy, and just smiling just like the way that you're doing as well. So Chaudhry साहब एक बार फिर से उर्दू में भी आप एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत इंसान है और बहुत ही अच्छे इंसान है. आपकी तरबियत का हमें पता लगता है, जिस तरह से आप मुस्कुराहट के साथ सबको जो है मिलते हैं. मेरा ख्याल है कि आपकी परवरिश भी बहुत अच्छी हुई और आज इस दिन पे हम आपके लिए तो दुआ गो हैं ही, हम आपके वालिदैन के लिए, आपके बच्चों के लिए भी दुआ गो हैं. So are we going to sing him the song?
Happy birthday to
you. Happy birthday, Chaudhry Iftikhar. Happy birthday to you, and may you have many more. और अल्लाह करे कि आप सिर्फ क्रिकेट की किट्स पहने ना, क्रिकेट खेल भी सकें, क्योंकि मुझे नहीं लगता कि आप खेल सकते हैं. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, look after yourself, and please make sure that you look after all of those people who are around you, who work with you as your teammates as well, and be that leader, who really needs to be the voice of all of those people. Until next time, look after yourselves. Have a great week ahead. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning.
Thank you.